Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into, well, a really unique piece of writing. Psalm 119. It's famous for being long, sure, but it's more than that. It's this incredibly focused, deep meditation on just one big idea. That idea is the importance, the personal impact of God's law, or statutes, precepts, commands, decrees, words, promises. The text uses lots of terms, doesn't it?
It really does. You get this sense they're all pointing towards God's revealed will, his guidance, and the whole chapter just explores this relationship from, well, almost every angle imaginable.
Right. It's not just abstract theology.
No, not at all. It's about a life lived really intimately with these instructions.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where does it start? What's the entry point? Well, it kicks off talking about who's blessed. Verses 1 to 3 lay it out pretty clearly. It says, "Blessed are those whose ways are blameless, who walk according to the law of the Lord. And blessed are they who keep his statutes and seek him with all their heart." It even adds, they do nothing wrong. So what's that telling us right away?
It's striking, isn't it? There's no messing around. It immediately draws this direct line between living God's way, following his law, and this state of, well, blessedness or purity. Think about verse 9. How can a young person stay on the path of purity? By living according to your word. It's explicit.
Okay, purity through the word.
But it's not just, ticking boxes externally. That phrase, seek him with all their heart, is key right from the start. It's saying this blessedness, this purity, it flows from your inner orientation, your whole self turned towards God's instructions, not just going through the motions.
So it starts there, walk in heart.
Mhm.
But then the text just dives deep into this inner desire, doesn't it? The language is so strong. It's not just, I should follow. It's verse 5. "Oh, that my ways were steadfast in obeying your decrees." That sounds like a real ache.
Exactly, a
Yeah.
yearning.
And then verse 10, "I seek you with all my heart." It's a clear statement. But there's also this consuming feeling described, verse 20. "My soul is consumed with longing for your laws at all times." Or verse 40, "How I long for your precepts."
Mhm.
Even looking ahead to God's help is framed this way. "My soul faints with longing for your salvation," which pops up a couple of times. Why such, intense desire?
I think it shows the relationship isn't meant to be cold or purely dutiful. It's passionate. Almost, you could say, a kind of spiritual longing that feels very personal. And this inner state, this longing, it's not just feelings for feeling's sake. The text connects it directly to, well, practical stuff.
How so?
Look at verse 11. "I have hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you." See, it's not just about knowing the rules. It's about internalizing them, letting them sink deep inside so they actually shape you and help you avoid messing up.
Hiding it in your heart.
It's active too, verse 15. "I meditate on your precepts and consider your ways." It's this ongoing, reflective chewing on it, not just letting it sit there passively.
Right, right. Okay, so you've got the intense longing, the internalizing. How does that then, actually work out day to day? How does this law, this word, function practically?
Right.
The text calls it a lamp for my feet and a light on my path in verse 105.
Yeah, that's a key image. It moves from the inner feeling to the outward effect. The text paints the law as this vital source of wisdom, of insight that actually helps you navigate the world.
Like a lamp showing you where to step next.
Exactly. Especially when things seem dark or confusing. And it's not just for the already wise either. Verse 130 says it gives understanding to the simple. So even if you lack formal training or, worldly smarts, the word can make things clear.
And the psalmist makes some pretty bold claims about its power, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. "Your commands make me wiser than my enemies." That's verse 98. Then verses 99 and 100. "I have more insight than all my teachers, more understanding than the elders."
Wiser than his teachers.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason given isn't I'm smarter. It's because I meditate on your statutes or obey your precepts. It's basically saying this divine instruction offers a superior kind of practical wisdom. It helps you see things more clearly than even conventional wisdom sources.
Which explains the prayers for understanding.
Precisely. "Give me understanding, and I will keep your law." In verse 34. Or verse 18. "Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law." There's this recognition that you need God's help to really grasp its depth and power. And that understanding is what fuels that wholehearted obedience we talked about.
Okay, that makes sense. So it guides you, makes you wiser. But let's talk about the feeling side again. The positive emotions here are just incredibly strong. It's called a delight, again and again. Verses 16, 24, 70, 77, so many times. And straight up love, too, verses 47, 48, 113, 127. How can rules feel like a delight?
It's a powerful contrast to how we sometimes think of law, isn't it? As maybe burdensome or restrictive. But here, it's presented as a source of genuine joy. deep satisfaction. Verse 14 compares rejoicing in the statutes to rejoicing in great riches.
Like winning the lottery kind of joy.
Something like that level of excitement and value. And then there's that amazing sensory detail in verse 103.
Ah, the honey one.
Yes. How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Using taste, sweetness, it emphasizes just how personal, how satisfying, how, well, pleasurable this relationship with the word is meant to be. It's not just intellectual, it's almost visceral.
Sweeter than honey.
Yeah.
That paints a picture.
Yeah.
But how does that intense delight fit with, well, the heart stuff? Because another huge theme here is suffering. The text is full of it. The psalmist says he's laid low in the dust. His soul is weary with sorrow. He's suffered much. He talks about being mocked, slandered, facing scorn, oppression, traps, even feeling almost wiped from the earth in verse 87. That's a tough life.
It is, and this is maybe one of the most crucial points in the whole psalm. Following the law isn't presented as like a magic shield that stops bad things from happening. Sometimes the suffering seems to come because he's trying to follow it.
Right, for people who don't like it.
Exactly. So instead of preventing trouble, the text shows the law, the divine word, as the constant, reliable source of comfort and hope inside the trials. Verse 50 is key. My comfort in my suffering is this. Your promise preserves my life. The comfort is the promise itself.
Not the absence of pain, but the presence of the promise.
Yes. And look at verse 92. If your law had not been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. That delight we were just talking about, it becomes the very thing that gives resilience, that helps you survive when things fall apart.
So the response to suffering isn't, this isn't working, I quit.
Quite the opposite. It's remembering the laws, like in verse 52. It's refusing to forget the precepts even when things are terrible that comes up again and again. It's finding refuge, finding a shield in the word itself, verse 114. So the big idea here is that obedience isn't really a formula to avoid pain. It's more like a resource to get through it.
Wow. Okay. The delight and the guidance become the lifeline in the storm. That's powerful. Now, shifting focus just a bit, the text doesn't only talk about the personal experience of the law. It also says some pretty big things about the nature of the law itself. Right?
Yeah.
Like verse 89. Your word, O Lord, is eternal. It stands firm in the heavens.
Yes, it moves from the subjective, the personal feeling, to the objective character of the word. And the attributes it gives it are all about stability, reliability, permanence. It endures to this day. It's not temporary. Commands are trustworthy. Verse 86, statutes are righteous and fully trustworthy. Verse 160 says all God's words are true and his laws are eternal.
Eternal and trustworthy.
But maybe the most striking claim is verse 96. To all perfection I see a limit, but your commands are boundless. It sets the divine word apart from everything else, anything human or earthly. It suggests it has this inherent, perfect, limitless quality. Everything else runs out, hits a wall, but this doesn't. That's why it's such a reliable foundation.
Boundless. Huh. That's a strong claim. And that reliability seems even clearer when the psalmist keeps contrasting the path of obedience with, well, the path of those who ignore the law. He talks a lot about the arrogant, the wicked, the faithless evildoers. Why draw that contrast so often?
Well, it paints a picture of two ways to live, doesn't it? One grounded in this eternal, trustworthy word, and one not. And it describes the outcomes for those who forsake the law. They face rebuke, shame, their schemes are pointless, deceitfulness is in vain, they're discarded like dross, like worthless slag. Verse 155 says salvation is far from them.
So it highlights the negative consequences.
Yes, but it's not just a neutral observation. The psalmist feels very strongly about it. Indignation grips me because of the wicked. I hate and abhor falsehood, but I love your law. I look on the faithless with loathing, Psalm 158. I hate double-minded men, but I love your law. 1:13.
Pretty intense feelings.
Very intense. But I think it's less about just condemning others and more about reinforcing for himself the incredible value of the path he is on. By seeing the chaos and failure associated with abandoning the law, it makes what he holds on to seem even more precious, more vital. The contrast throws the value of the law into sharp relief.
Okay, so the negative feelings reinforce the positive commitment. That makes sense. And finally, maybe the most obvious thing about the chapter is just how much praying is going on. It feels like almost every other verse is a direct appeal to God, asking for teaching, for direction, for strength, preservation, mercy, deliverance, understanding. The list goes on and on.
It's constant, isn't it? And I think that shows that despite the deep love for the law, despite the commitment, there's this profound sense of dependence. You can't do it alone. You need God's help constantly.
But it's not a passive waiting for help.
It's not at all. That prayerful stance goes hand in hand with this clear, repeated commitment to obey. Even while asking for help, the intention is firm. I will obey your decrees. I will always obey your law forever and ever, V44. There's that sense of urgency in verse 60. I will hasten and not delay to obey your commands.
No procrastination there.
Name's not. And verse 112. My heart is set on keeping your decrees to the very end. And near the conclusion, verses 167, 168, I obey your statutes, for I love them greatly. I obey your precepts and your statutes. So it portrays living by God's guidance not as, a state you arrive at, but as this active ongoing dialogue. It's wrestling, committing, and constantly turning back for strength and direction.
Right, so wrapping this up, we've journeyed through Psalm 119, seeing this really deep, multifaceted connection the psalmist has with God's word, God's law. It's not dry rules, but a source of blessing, something deeply longed for, a practical guide, a source of wisdom, profound delight, and comfort in hard times. And it's all grounded in this view of the word as eternal, trustworthy, boundless, requiring constant prayer and commitment.
It really does challenge you to think about what it means to relate to a foundational text or set of principles. And maybe final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. When you see the sheer devotion, the singular focus this ancient writer puts on engaging with this one source for guidance and truth, meditating on it, loving it, finding refuge in it, well, in our world today, which is just overflowing with information, competing voices, constant noise, what might this kind of intense personal relationship with a chosen, reliable source, like the one we see in Psalm 119, suggest to us about finding our own way, about finding clarity amidst all the complexity?
Definitely something to think about. That's our deep dive for today.